Hi guys, let's talk about condition statements in that. Condition statements are essential for controlling the flow of your program based on specific instruction. They allow you to execute certain blocks of code when particular criteria are met. The primary condition statement in that include if else, else if, and switch. Let's start with the if statement. The if statement executes a block of code if a specific condition evaluates to be true. So let's look at the syntax of the if statement. You start with writing if, then open brackets and close brackets. You have your condition inside this bracket, and we have our curly bracket starts here and ends here. So whatever code you want to execute when this condition is true, you have it inside the curly bracket. Let's look at a simple example. Remember, the first thing you do is that you make use of your if and then open bracket, close bracket, where we have our condition. So let's create a variable. We have int, which is age, and then we can say the age is 20 years. Inside the bracket, you can have if age is greater than or equals 18. That's a condition. So this will return either true or false depending on whatever value we assign to our variable age. Now let's have our curly bracket here, where we're going to be writing the block of code we want to execute if this condition is true. So we can just say print you are an adult. So let's add semicolon here and let's run this. So you can see we have you are an adult because this condition is true. Age is equals to 20, which is greater than 18. So let's change this from 20 to 16. And if we run this code now, you get to see that we don't have anything printed out yet. And the reason why it's like this is because we're only making use of the if statement. Now let's talk about the if-else statement. The if-else statement provides alternative paths of execution when the if condition evaluates to be false. Now the example I have on the screen here shows that this is false. Then what happens when this is false? That's where the else comes in. When the if condition is false and we could not execute the line of code we have in the curly brackets here, then we jump into the else, and then whatever code we have there, we execute such code. So now let's look at how we can modify the example we have. So we have else, and then inside the curly bracket, we can print you are not an adult. And let's add semicolon here. So if I run my code now again you can see I have you are not an adult because this is false. And if we change this back to maybe 19 and we run it, and then you can see that we have the block of code which we have inside the if curly bracket executed. Remember, the else does not take condition like the if. Let's look at the syntax again. For if, you have your if written, then inside the bracket you have your condition stated out, just like I have age is less than or equals to 18. And after that, you have your curly bracket, then you have the code you want to execute. Now I want to execute this line of code if this is true. Then if it is false, we jump to the else. Then we have the curly bracket where we also have the block of code we want to execute. So we have print you are not an adult here. So that's how the if else statement works. Now let's talk about the else if ladder. The else if ladder allows you to test multiple conditions sequentially, executing the corresponding block of code for the false condition that evaluates to be true. So for the else if ladder, we have this syntax. The first thing is the if statement, where we have our condition, just like we've been seeing in our previous example. And then if this is true, we execute the block of code that are inside this curly brackets. Then if this is false, we jump to the next one, which is the else if statement. And then we have our condition also inside the bracket. If this is true, we execute the block of code inside the curly bracket. If this is false, we jump to the last statement, which is the else statement, and then we execute the block of code inside the else statement. Let's look at an example. Let's say we have a variable score, and then we give this 85. And then we say if score is greater than or equals to 90, then we can print grade A. And then after that, now this is for the if statement. After that, let's have our else if statement. So that means if this is false, then this should happen next. So we can have else if. Then we have our condition also. We can say if score is greater than or equals to 80, then you can print grade B. And let's have this here. And then so if this is false, we'll jump to the next statement, which is the else if. If this is false, then let's jump to the next one, else if statement. Then we can say score is greater than or equals to 70. And then we can give the person, we can print grade C, and let's add semicolon here. And then if all these are false, then print. So we have our else here. And then we can print grade is F here. And then we have grade is F. So now let's run our code. We can see we have grade is B because our grade is 85, which is greater than or equals to 80, but it's not up to 19. That's why this is false. So if you change this from this, now we make it, let's say 95, and let's run this again. You can see we have grade A. If we should change this from 95 to, let's say 72, you can see we have grade C. So this is false, this is false, then we have this to be true. So we execute the line of code that it's here, and once we are done with this, we'll break out of the condition statement. We don't have to execute the else statement because this is true already. Now let's talk about switch statement. In that, the switch statements evaluate an expression and execute the matching case block. It's particularly useful when you have multiple possible value for a single expression. Let's say we have int and we have score here, just like what we did the other time. Let's say we have 89 here. So we make use of the expression here, something like this. We have it here. So what we do is that we compare the value with what we have in the expression. If it is true, we execute the code after the first case, and then we break out. If not, we continue, and then we'll check the second case. If this happens to be true with what we have in the expression, we execute the line of code, and then we'll break out. If not, we check for the other cases that we have. And if all happens to be false, we move to the default, and then we execute the default line of code. So now let's see an example. Let me remove this. I won't be making it up this. Let's say we have a string day, and then for the day, let's make it Monday. And yeah, so the first thing you write is the switch keyword, and then you have your expression inside the bracket. So let's say we have day here, and then I can come here, and then I can come here. Then we can have our first case, and then first case is Monday. So if this happens to be true, we now execute this code, print, and then we can say start of the work. Let me remove this. Sorry for this. Start of the work week. Let's have this. So if the first case matches what we have in our expression, then we execute this line of code. If it's not true, then we create another case. You can say case, and then we can have Friday, for example, and then we have this. Then we have this. Now, note, we are not making use of semicolon here. We are making use of colon here. So not like this, but this. So we come down here, and then we can have whatever block of code we want to execute. So I'll just rush this up now, then I will run the code, and then you see the results. So now you can see for Friday we have end of the work week, and for Saturday and Sunday we have weekend. For default we have midweek days. So if I put Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, you know that is the midweek day. So let's run our code, and now you can see we have start of the work week. If I change this from Monday to Tuesday, and let's run this, you can see we have midday. So let's make this Saturday, and let's run this. We have weekends. So the first thing is the switch keyword, and then we have our expression inside the bracket, and then we have our curly bracket starting here and ending here. So inside this curly bracket we have cases of values we want to compare with our expression. So the first case is Monday. So if this matches what we have in our expression, we print this line of code. If this happens to be false, we continue. So but once this is true, we break out of it, just like what have you. Once this is true, we'll break out of the code. But if it is false, it continues, and then it checks on Friday. If Friday matches with what we have in our expression, we execute this line of code. If it is false, we move to the next one. Since we know that Saturday and Sunday are both weekend, we can have something like this under the two case. And then if this happens to match with this, it executes this. If this also happens to match with this, it also executes this. And if it doesn't match with any of the cases we have our default. The default is just like the else, and then we print this out. So that's how the switch statement works. Now let's talk about the ternary conditional operator. That also provides a concise way to perform simple conditional assignment using the ternary operator. And the syntax is like this. We have the condition. If this happens to be true, we execute the first expression. But if this happens to be false, we execute the second expression. So we mainly use this when we have just two expressions we want to execute, depending on the Boolean result we get from the conditions. If it is true, we execute the first expression, while if it is false, we execute the second expression. Let's look at this example. So we can say int, and then age equals to 18, and we can say, let's have string here where we store whatever expression happens to be true. So we can say eligibility equals to, so we are checking now if age is greater than or equals to 18. So we can have this and say age is greater than or equals to 18. If this is true, then let's have you are eligible to vote. Why if it is false, we can have you are not eligible to vote. And let's add semicolon here. So now we have our ternary condition operator here. So we have that age is greater than, if age is greater than or equals to 18, then you are eligible to vote. If the value of age is not greater than or equals to 18, then you are not eligible to vote. So if you try to come here now, let's print the eligibility. So if we run our code now, you can see we have you are eligible to vote. If we change this from 18 to, let's say 14, and we run this now, you are not eligible to vote. And that's the end of our tutorial on condition statement. Understanding and effectively using the condition statement will enable you to control the execution flow of your Dart programs based on dynamic condition. If you enjoyed this tutorial, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. See you in the next tutorial.